Goodness. All right. Welcome back to the Husky Women's Hoop Show. It has been since our last episode. That last episode really went into Washington's. Oh, and now my screen's broken. My Washington's upset win over Michigan. And, we thought maybe, hey, there's some momentum to carry into here to the Michigan State game. You're playing a Michigan State team that I believe was just rated. I don't know where they're at now, but the UW schedule has them listed at 15th at the time. Washington, that was bad. That home game against Michigan State wasn't great. They go on the road to play Purdue, and they drop that game, as we've discussed at length off camera, in overtime by 6 to a Purdue team that, uh, how do I say this nicely? They're not very good. Um, that was a source of frustration. We're going to start there, right? Because since then, Washington's been able to take off, and we'll get into that, highlighted by this win over now number 16 Maryland. Probably not anymore. Um, but that Michigan State game and the Purdue game, it felt like there was this Michigan State such a big high. This Michigan game's a big high, right? You beat the number 6 team in the nation. I didn't really think they played that well against Michigan. There's some things they could have done better. You could say the same about Michigan, of course. But then Michigan State, I mean, it just kind of felt like you hit the reset button. It's like you just kind of got dominated here. I know Bella has a ton of notes. Well, you have notes on Purdue. Do you have notes on Michigan State?
I have notes on every, I told you I have notes on every single game since we last recorded. This is what I was doing
On
last
your
night instead
iPad.
of the other work I should have been doing.
It's not my fault. But yeah, we'll go with Bella and her lovely iPad notes, and then Rowan, of course, out freezing in the Colorado cold.
I am, but
Oh, you're
anything for the pod.
recording outside. What
Yeah.
Yes,
in
I
the
am.
girl?
Yes, I am. But anything to talk about UW.
So I guess I'll start with gosh, the Michigan State game was rough. Um, Painful. I was not here. I watched from Florida in dismay, just very unhappy. I think we texted about it a lot during the game. The defense just looked bad. Like just getting a lot of backdoor cuts to the basket, easy layups. Michigan ended up shooting quite well, or no, they did not. That's my mistake. Nope, yes, I was right. They shot really well from the floor. They shot 51.6% from the floor, and destroyed UW in the paint. And also, when I say Michigan, I mean Michigan State, but I'm not going to say Michigan State every time because that's such a waste of breath. But just absolutely destroyed them in paint. Got so many easy layups. Like it just looked like when UW was trying to score, it took this immense effort, and then MSU would come down the other end and easily get a bucket. They also got 19 points off of 17 UW turnovers. They had 13 fast break points to UW's 5. Were out rebounded 40 to 21. Just completely dominated in basically every category. Um, and it's hard to really determine why there was such a sharp drop off after the Michigan game. Like I was in Florida, caught up with someone Rowan and I work for, Howard Megdal, and he was asking me like after the Michigan win, this was also after the overtime loss to Purdue. So kind of like balancing the two, like is UW like a legit like tournament contender? And as I'm sitting there in a very loud, unrivaled arena, I was like, I don't really know. Because the Michigan win was unquestionably really good. They did a lot of really good things. There was also some of like Michigan not really playing their best that sort of helped them win that game. But then to come off that high and lose 2 games in a row, like it was understandable to lose to Michigan State, but the way they lost to Michigan State was so like it felt like you can't be that inconsistent. Like certainly all of the teams, even all of the ranked teams this year, there's been so much movement. Like no team other than UConn, has been super, super consistent. There's a level of inconsistency you can have, but to be kind of blown out like that at home after such a big win, like it just felt like there was so much wrong. And the thing is, they started well. Like they were leading 25-14 at the end of the first quarter, and then had two straight quarters where they only scored 11 points and Michigan had over 20. Like you can't have that big of a lull. And the only reason they like, because they had a similar lull against Michigan, we talked about it, but they had built up such a big lead that they kind of barely held on. And we talked about it against ranked teams, you're not going to build that kind of lead. And it just kind of fell apart somewhere in there. And then with the Purdue game, I do want to give some credit to Purdue. Like they had really some pretty good balanced scoring. They particularly destroyed us in bench points. They had 24 bench points to our 8. Um, they didn't, but they didn't really like edge any of the other categories, like other than getting again 26 points off of 20 turnovers. Turnovers, big issue that I will be coming back to. Um, Particularly because in overtime, it felt like, because I just watched that overtime, um, Purdue turned up their defense to an extent. Like I will give them credit for that in overtime. At the same time, there were turnovers where it was just like, that should not be happening. And they had, I want to say 4 or 5 in overtime. They had over 12 scoreless minutes that went back to regulation that allowed Purdue to tie up the game. They got lucky at the end that Purdue didn't hit the and one free throw to win the game outright because they could not hit a shot to win the game. Um, they didn't score until there was a minute and 18 seconds left in overtime. Like, and to some extent, momentum was with Purdue. They had been the ones to come back. They had been behind by as many as 13. UW had led for 36 minutes. Um, and Purdue really only came back at the very end there. Um, and led by as many as 9 in overtime. And it was it's an odd one. Um, Also, they sort of sent Purdue to the line 10 times in overtime, which I don't think helped them in overtime. I'm not sure if that was like it seemed like maybe that was a tactic and maybe some of the fouls were accidents. Um and so I just it was a and it, we I had talked about this after you got off last time, Rowan, but I had concerns about how they would play on the road. Um because they have struggled on the road and they haven't played on the road much this year at all. Um and I don't know if that sort of fits in this category or what. Maybe they were still sort of bogged down from the Michigan State disappointment. Um but it was just not really a good game for anyone. I mean, Savia was 10 of 24 from the field. Like the team overall was 40% from the field, which is not horrible, but not great either. Um, and so just a very interesting and disappointing game. And I do, Purdue is not the bottom of the Big Ten, but they are the lower middle. They're between the bottom and the lower middle. Like that is not a game you should lose in overtime when you are ranked. Um, so it's a disappointing one. And I'll stop there because I think those were the two games we wanted to start with. But I do think the way that they have rebounded since is very encouraging. Um, I'm hopeful that like those lessons have kind of maybe stuck because of how bad those losses were. Granted, the other than the Maryland game, the competition has been so-so since those games. But also they lost to Purdue. So like if they had then lost to another team that they shouldn't have lost to, it would have kind of fit that pattern. So I'm glad that they're getting out of that pattern. Um but yeah, two just disappointing games that really felt out of character, and the Purdue one in particular just felt like execution. It just felt like it was a collapse at the end. Which is why, as we'll talk about, them not collapsing at the end of the Maryland game was so lovely. Um, so yeah, I think those are my notes on on those games.
Thanks for your thorough notes. So appreciated. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting to be asked that question of like, are they actual legit contenders? I've been talking to Bella about going to the Big Ten tournament. I will be at the Big Ten tournament in March. And I was thinking about it and trying to book my flight and being like, okay, what day should I get there? Based on like what seeded teams are playing on these days. And I'm like, oh, well, like, I can get there on the day that I don't know, 7 or 10 and up, are going. And then I'm like, it's really hard to know. Like with the Big Ten, I'm like, UW could be with some games like the Maryland win, the Michigan win, they looked like they could be, a 4 or 5 seed. And then there are games like, Purdue and I guess Michigan State. I agree that, obviously the Michigan State losing to Michigan State was not surprising, but it was not done in the way that it should have been. And with that, it's just like if you play like you do against Purdue, they could be at the, bottom of the seating in the Big Ten. And obviously we know that in the Big Ten tournament, which I still find so bizarre because we're used to the Pac-12 tournament, not every team makes their conference tournament, which like I could do a TED talk on how irritating that is. Why do we have a conference so big that you can't even get into your own conference tournament? Anyways, and it is really interesting to look at their records and see the games that they won against these really, really great teams. And then you almost lose a game against a Wisconsin Green Bay and you lose, you lose to Purdue. And I think when looking, just anything I can add on to your notes. The Purdue game is really interesting to me because, there are some areas that, on paper, don't look terrible compared to Purdue. You have UW's 11 fast break points to Purdue's 6, or things like that that just don't seem so like so clearly like they would lose. But that fourth quarter overtime situation just was really, really bad. And again, I feel like every time we record, we talk about the end of game execution because we've been talking about this for 2 seasons now. And that felt, a little classic end of game execution that we've seen a few times over the past couple of seasons. But I think with that, with both Michigan State and Purdue, and honestly, like you mentioned, Michigan as well, game after game, they have UW has this 1 or 2 quarters of a lull. They shot 22% in the third quarter of the Michigan State game, 27% from three, and it just was not enough. I think Purdue, they shot 27% in the fourth quarter. Um, and I think that has been their weakest spot so far, of just having a lull that they're not able to make up for. And yeah, that Michigan game was lucky. I think it put a lot of people, were like, oh, okay, UW could actually be a little bit of something, but um, seeing the end of the game score, but it wasn't perfect by any means. And I think that that's going to be something that is going to need to be looked at a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that Purdue game, when you're looking at their schedule and you're looking at the rest of the games that they have played this season, they have lost by at least 10, average 20 against a lot of teams. Lost by 30 to Michigan State, 50 to UCLA, 30 to USC. It's just, that game was very it was scary to think that a number 23 ranked team could lose to a Purdue team who was then beat by 30 by unranked USC the next game. Um, so I think that I think with games like that, I hate to just say it feels like a one-off because it's not, but with a game like that, you're just like, I just don't like you lose a game like that and then you bounce back to win a game against Maryland. It's just very confusing, honestly. But on the bright side of the Purdue game, I believe I'm going to double check this before I say it. On the bright side of the Purdue game, it was during the 3 game stretch that Ella Dean had double-digit points, and she, did she had that's Michigan State. I have too many tabs open. See, I need to get on the iPad thing. Oh, sorry. I think it was the Michigan State game that I was talking about, that she was the leading scorer. And was like, okay, they lost, but, we've been waiting for Elle to kind of move back into that leading scorer at some games position that she was in last year. And we haven't really seen that for her. And so, in the Michigan State game, I was hopeful that, her 15 points, her game, your, team high 15 points was gonna be enough to kind of get them there. But yeah, those 2 games were rough.
It was rough, and then it sets us up. And you mentioned L, and I do when we get past this little segment of a surge, right? Because after those 2 losses, uh, as you mentioned, the two, well, they were back to back. I don't know why I was gonna say 2 and 3. It's not like they were split. But the Michigan State and the Purdue losses, which as you guys talked about at length, they're 2 different teams. This is a Michigan State team that's, you know, I'm sure they'll make some noise in the tournament. Purdue, Purdue, you know, uh,
Oh yes, Michigan
it's
State is 13th right now. I know you were wondering what they
right.
were right
Thank
now.
you. Yeah, because your losses come against a USC team. They're currently USC is still unranked now, right? Because at the time they were ranked. So your losses come against a then ranked USC team, Stanford, who has played some good games, if I do remember correctly.
Yeah, they're a
Um,
team. They're a team that I'm surprised haven't been in the poll at all this season, if I'm not mistaken. Stanford
Yeah,
and
I don't have it.
Oregon. This is not UW related, but Stanford and Oregon are 2 teams that I don't really understand how at some point in the season they haven't been ranked. But the Stanford loss was not as as big as like a Purdue loss or something like that because Stanford has been decently solid.
I think they've
right.
both had a couple ranked wins, but then also like not great overall records. And that's sort of been what's killed them. Whereas like UW has sort of had a good okay like overall record and then a couple ranked wins also, which is why they've been ranked. Though I agree, like there's been a couple times been like, I feel like Stanford should be ranked right now. So they're not like again, it's not a bad win, but it also was a rough one to watch, as we all felt.
Right. And at least looking at bracketology, I love my little toy that's bracketology, especially with the way it is. I'm telling you guys, if like while I'm talking, look at it in the background because it's fun. There's new graphics and everything. Stanford's been in bracket. They haven't left bracketology all season. Like they've never been in the first 4 out or the next 4 out either. So it's not like the Cardinal have like, yeah, as we're kind of talking about here, they're not this bottom of the barrel team. So you've got a then ranked USC, you've got Stanford, who's been in the mix. Unless something crazy happens, they'll probably end up being one of the lower seeds in the tournament. Michigan State, and then Purdue, and then after this, which we'll get to now, they've rattled off double-digit wins against Indiana, Minnesota, Penn State, Rutgers, and then the 3-point win against Maryland here in double overtime. Lovely double overtime that surely wasn't agonizing. Um, I
I
guess
wasn't dying or yelling and making my dog run away.
I lost all my hair. Um,
That's
I
what
guess
happened to it.
I guess my biggest question, because I don't necessarily need you to break down because with respect to these programs. I don't think any of them are gonna make you say, "Wow, you'd have beat the Hoosiers, you'd have beat the Golden Gophers." I'm not saying Lady Lions. That's stupid.
I don't.
Grow up. It's 2026.
I will say though, I was gonna say I don't know where you were going with this, but when you just mentioned the Golden Gophers, I will say that in that stretch there, I think of any notable of that stretch before the Maryland game, of any notable game in there, Minnesota's been ranked. They've had a pretty
Right.
good season. So I was like I don't need to talk all that much about it, but I was impressed by that win. And also that was a game that they did not have any quarter that they shot less than 35%. They didn't really have a significant of a lull as some of the some of the other games that they've played. And it's a 13-point win, so on paper it looks pretty good, but knowing how their season has been, I was impressed with that one, and that one definitely could have been that one was a little up in the air to me.
Yeah.
If it was a good day, they won it like they and it was a good day, they won it like they did. If it was a bad day, that could have looked a lot different. And I think yeah, Penn State, Indiana, they took care, they Rutgers, they took care of business. Like
Right.
yeah, but
That's my point,
Minnesota
is that
won.
if you're gonna be this ranked team that you've been somewhat consistent. I always like seeing what Rowan tweets whenever they get ranked in the AP poll, like the different history of the
That's
fact that
my
this is the first
nerd.
time that they've.
That's my nerd moment. UW's
That's
SID has heard from
yours.
me only about the AP poll. So yeah,
You,
that's
you've
mine.
got that, and Bella's got the iPad. It's great.
Exactly.
The
Um,
iPad is new, and we're already making fun of it.
Listen. To be fair, one of the Seattle Times writer Percy Allen has an iPad that he also works with during games. He usually just watches other games on it.
I was gonna say I've
Um,
never seen Percy use an iPad. What are you talking about?
I've seen him watch
no, he
games on
does.
it.
Yeah, he
And
watches
then
games on it. I've never seen him take notes on it.
that's what I'm saying. I said that. And
He
then
takes
the
his notes
Kraken P.
on whatever printed out box score he's given.
Yes, yes, I'm getting past this. The Kraken PR person uses an iPad for notes. So I'm kind of like being now with Bella, I feel like I'm being pushed into the direction of having an iPad, even though I've got one screen here, and then my phone, and then there's a monitor over here. So like, I need
You
more
have
screens.
enough devices, as I
No, I
noted
don't.
when
No,
we
I don't.
drove to Jollibee and you were like, "Oh, this computer's dead. Put it away." Pulled out a different computer.
I
This
have
is true.
also seen both of your computers before, and I yeah.
Am I wrong in needing them, given what I do?
No, it was just
Okay,
really
that's all I
funny
needed,
that
Bella. Thank you.
you were like this
This is
one's
what I
dead, and then
needed.
suddenly you pulled out a different one, and I'm just like driving on the
I
highway.
continue with the show. Not slandering me in my second laptop.
Okay,
Um,
that's so funny because the only time I've been to Jollibee was also with him.
Yeah,
So, I
when did we go to Jollibee?
he
we went
claimed
to
he hadn't
Jollibee. Okay,
been.
anyways, I thought we went to Jollibee. Where did we go? Okay, never mind. This is we went somewhere in
We went to
Burien.
Shake Shack.
We went to Shake Shack, but
There's a
okay,
Shake
never mind.
Shack
We
in
have to.
Burien. We
It's not
have
a
Shake
Shake
No,
Shack
we
in
Shack.
weren't in.
Burien. No, no, no.
Okay, this is now the Bella, Rowan, and Charles friendship podcast. All right. Um, no. Anyway, my
Anyways.
point is, right, if you're going to be this ranked team that's going to be, consistently in the AP poll for the first time since Kelsey Plum and Chantel
Mhm.
Osahor were on this was almost a franchise. Well, with college currently. Um, on in this program, right? You need to take care of business against these teams.
Yeah.
And, again, with respect to them, I'm not saying any of them are scrub worthy. There were definitely some of the players on these teams they were beating. Like, who is the Penn State center? I was like, God
Gracie
damn,
Merkel, who
Gracie
we
Gracie
Merkel.
Merkel. I was like, you
Who
guys
significantly
need to
struggled
buckle down.
to to
which is
to lock down.
which is hilarious. I was actually going to mention when she entered the portal. I remember at least Charles and I having a long conversation, like or like talking about.
Hmm.
Was it the three of us? How
I
how
think
much
so.
it would have been so nice to have Gracie Merkel. So
Can you imagine?
she heard us and decided to.
We'll put a show on for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, that's my point. Is it's not to slander these programs. It's just to say if Washington wants to be this consistently ranked team, they need to take care of business. And it did feel like to me that they did that in each one of these games. Um, and then you get to this Maryland game, and it was interesting to kind of see Maryland fans' reactions. Like I get that they're pretty banged up, right? This is a Terrapins team that's pretty banged up. But I mean, they've still got talent. That was pretty clear. I mean, Addie Mack had probably the game of her. Well, she's a freshman, right? The game of her season.
Yeah, I was interested to see it a bit more for stats. I know she's been doing really well. I'm not going to say surprisingly. I didn't know anything about her in high school, but anytime I watch her, I'm like, it is so impressive to me how she's one of those people in the nicest way possible that like does not look like a D1 basketball player. She's so
Hmm.
tiny, and the way that I was very impressed with her, but looking at her stats now, so continue, but.
Right, but just it felt like she had you heard the young announcers on the broadcast say her name plenty of times. Bella was remarking early into the game about how Garzon always seems to light it up against the University of Washington, and that's annoying. And
She was
she did
only four
early,
of 10 from 3-point land this time, which is way better than the like 8 of 9 she was last year when she played for
right?
Indiana.
Well, and
She
she
was
started well, and then just kind of went downhill as the
Yeah.
game went on, right? Um,
That was Addie Mac's second 20-point game of the season. She's had a good bit of double-digit games, but second
okay.
20-point game of the season. So yeah, big game for her.
And I mean, hey, like again, with Maryland as banged up as they are, like for her to step up in that regard, it's good for them, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, I guess what sticks out to you, it could be, I know the big win here in this reporting is going to be the Maryland game, but what sticks out to you is amongst this surge, is it, anything that maybe is, pointed in this Maryland game? Um, the agony of having to deal with, the late review about when the foul is called, at the very end of one of the periods. Just what sticks out to you? You can, if you want to like jumble it all for the current surge, or if you want to talk about strictly Maryland, I'd love to hear thoughts. We went with Bella first. I'm looking like she's going in on the iPad right now, so we'll go to Rowan. Um, hey, hey, there's an NHL player who did that on camera and he got fined $5,000. So
I am not in the NHL. We're not on
how
national
do you know that?
television.
How do I know
Like,
that?
I don't think that this is a
Um,
concern for me.
but yeah, no. Rowan, just I guess anything. What sticks out to you from the surge, or if you want to look at more of the Maryland game because that's obviously the game of consequence of that stretch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Surge games, not much to say. Like, obviously they played well, and again, when you have a game like that Purdue game, you can see that it's not just a team being bad, that will win them the game. They do have to play well to win said game. But I do think that I don't know. I've been impressed. Like different people have been having big games. I wanted to mention the 17 rebounds from Yulia in that Rutgers game. Oh my gosh. And also, and then Bryn McGoy with 17 points, 7 rebounds. Really, really big. They out rebounded Rutgers by 21. So I'm just looking at that game specifically because I think there were some significant individual stats. I also love that I love looking at that box score because it's like, Avery Howell 16 points, Savia 11 points, which, we've talked about before. Obviously, we'll get to Savia's 38. And, she is very prolific scorer, but I do love to see when she doesn't have as many points that there are other options. She played 28 minutes. In 28 minutes, she could have had way more than 11 points, but everyone ate that day because you have Bryn with 17, Hannah Steins with 9. I think we don't talk, I mean, we talk, enough about Hannah Steins, but I think the thing about her that goes under the radar a lot is just because she's so consistently around that 9, 10 points area where she's never really the leading scorer except for that one game last season. Was it a 30-point game or Elle had the 40, Hannah had the 30. Was that right? Do you remember that?
I don't remember Hannah
Hannah had
having
a
30,
okay,
but
Hannah had
I
a
would I
really
would
big
I would
game
say
last
like a
No,
season.
25 or 28, something like that. And
I feel
I
like
think she
she
had over
did.
21 game this season as well. I think actually in the surge because I was looking at it.
I need to look at
Um,
it now. But anyways,
and I have a
she
note about those
oh,
17 rebounds and those
please
17 points if you don't
please
mind.
share.
The 17 rebounds was a career high for Yulia and also the most by a Husky since January 21st, 2018.
Wow. And who was
And
that?
I don't know. Ty's notes didn't mention that.
Interesting. Okay.
But
Well,
then I do have also that Bryn 17 is the most points by freshman in conference play since Savia had 20 versus Arizona back in 2024 when she was a freshman. Obviously,
mhm.
that one's not as far back because Savia as a freshman was insane. But I do think it's, good to see that in conference play from a freshman and sort of because we've talked about her, sort of her developing through this season. So those are just my notes that I had pulled out of the game notes. Oh, we have a hand raised.
Yes.
Hannah had
28.
28 against
Yep.
Penn State last
Okay.
year.
So a near 30.
Yeah.
Um,
Give it
I,
to
I,
her.
rem I remember there was some stat about last season it was the first time that there was like a 40 and a 25 plus from like multiple different Huskies at the same time. There was some stat.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
I'm also looking, it's so fun that you mentioned the 2018 Husky team because I literally went to probably every game of that season and this is like totally taking me back looking at the roster. Probably would have been either Hannah Johnson or
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably Hannah Johnson. I'm assuming maybe Kayla Rooks, I'm not sure. Anyways, um
You want to look for the game, January 21st, 2018.
okay, well now I want to look. Anyways, yeah, I think with Hannah Steins I was just looking at her her box from or just her game log. And I think that she yeah has been consistently rebounding well, scoring consistently well. I think the only person that disappointed in the Rutgers game offensively was Ella Dean, which again, it's interesting when you have a win that big. She played 15 minutes, so I guess a little bit less than usual or than more people. But anyways,
Didn't
impressed with
she also
Bren.
go out injured?
Was that the game that she
I
was?
believe
I
that
was
was
Rutgers,
the,
yes,
about to
she was
say,
on
yeah,
okay.
the stationary bike for the entire second half.
Okay.
yeah. It was like,
So
but the lead was so big, there was no
that's
reason to
right.
put her back
Like
in.
Yeah.
why? Yeah,
Okay.
why would
I was
you?
getting that one confused with the other one. I was like, when did she get injured?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think all those again, just taking care of business. The Maryland game I do, have so many thoughts. I think it was interesting to see the kind of opposite. Like I think we've talked about, the games that they have soared to a big lead and then when they have that lull, then they have to kind of, close that gap again. But in this one, it was really the opposite. They at the end of the first quarter, 22-11, they were down 22-11. And then, after that, I mean, second quarter, they scored 12 points to Maryland's 13, but after that they either outscored or tied them in the third quarter, fourth quarter, and the fifth quarter, aka, first overtime, and then, ultimately did outscore them in the sixth quarter as well in the second overtime. But I think like this game does feel significant in a way of showing growth, I think. Again, with the end of game execution that we have talked about. When it went into overtime, I think I texted both of you and I was like, I don't think that this is gonna like they're just not gonna be able to pull this off. We saw it against Purdue. We've seen it before. I was like, they are getting tired. Savia is taking on so much of the offensive load. Like, can she really keep this going? And she did. And I was, really impressed. We did talk about it, in Maryland's def I don't know if this is really a defense of Maryland per se, but in UW's defense, no, I don't think it's in anyone's defense. There were some times there with Maryland in that overtime that it wasn't necessarily something that UW did well. It was something that Maryland did not do well. We've talked about the very weird shot choice by Garzon, the like fadeaway baseline jumper with like 20 seconds on the shot clock. Very, that worked out for UW for sure.
And then when they got the
Um,
ball back, they took another quick shot, even though they still had quite a bit of time because they had
yeah.
fouled so quickly.
Yeah. And then that bizarre foul sequence, with Avery that I always like to share. In high school, I was a ref. It was the worst job I've ever had. I cried after every game. But one thing that they taught us in my reffing classes was, about one, calling things consistently throughout the game, but two, when you're in a moment like that, when you calling a foul is going to decide the game, it's just not the time. And I don't think that that Avery foul was blatant enough to call it when you knew that that the shot clock was, or that the clock was literally a second away from going. I do think it was a foul if you could call it, like you can call it a foul, but I didn't think it was necessary, and that just was very frustrating. Anyway, super impressed with Sabia, obviously 38 points. Kind of hilarious though that she didn't shoot uh
Love of my life, Xavier Sellers.
she didn't. I love the pom pom. Now
I
you have
have
to
two. I could go get the other one too.
that is so funny.
You need me to get
Um
mine?
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't have yours.
Pom poms for
Um,
Savia.
she has what's hilarious about Savia though is like she is not the most efficient scorer in the world,
Yeah.
but you still have 38 points. You know, like 5 for 15 from three, but hey, you still, like you still had five threes, so like what does it matter? Um, I feel like every episode I talk about how impressed I am with Avery Howell. And I do find it funny. We've discussed the USC Twitter fans. And they I've now seen a little bit of a switch where they're all like, why are all of the people that transferred doing better at their new schools than USC? And I was like, hilarious, because you were coming for me months ago for talking about Avery. Anyways, 17 points, 11 rebounds for her. I think her rebounding, as I say in every episode, has been like the biggest thing for UW that I was not expecting from her at all. And that's been so helpful. And then 10 points from Elle, 7 points from Hannah. Like overall, maybe would have wanted to see a little bit more distributed scoring because we see sometimes that if Savia is having a lull, you know, but if Savia is having a lull, it does seem like the rest of the team picks up the slack and Savia was just going off against Maryland and she could handle it. So she took on that offense. But yeah, I was really impressed with the end of game execution, except for the free throws, which I also mention every episode because I believe they were 11 for 12 before overtime. And
Yes.
then what were they, three for, or no, one for four in
I have it. Hold on.
overtime? But anyways, I'll stop talking now. What are your
They
thoughts
were
on
six
Maryland?
of 10 in overtime.
Okay, 6 of 10. I
Both
guess
overtimes, I believe.
I'm thinking about the
But it was because
two
Elle missed two in a row
by
when they
L, and
were
I,
11 of 12
yep,
up to that point.
yes. So impressed. For the most part, I think there are going to be mistakes like those free throws in an overtime game like that, but overall, um, I overall was impressed with the way that they pulled that out when we know that they have a hard time with that sometimes.
100%. I feel like, gosh, I have so many things to say. Let's see if I can remember all of them. On Avery, I feel like something I'm hoping to write a story about soon. Let's hope that those interviews happen. Is she just feels to play, it feels like she plays with this certain grit and determination that is above and beyond. And that's not to say that like the other UW players don't, but the amount of times you see her like just, going in and grabbing balls from people on the floor in a tussle, like just there is some level of extra effort that is constantly there defensively. I think that's part of why she's getting so many rebounds as well. Like there is just something there that even when her shot is not falling, which is not particularly often, she's been, I want to say, relatively efficient. She just finds a way to make an impact. And another player who kind of did something similar in that particular game was Bryn McGoy. She was only 2 of 10 from the field. It was a rough game for her, but she did have 11 rebounds. And particularly, I'm thinking of the one at the end, the offensive rebound to then get the ball out to Elle and get the game tying three. Like, that is a massive, massive play from a freshman. Like, first of all, to have, the strength and
Where's the pom pom?
oh, the strength and the like the work effort to get that, but then also to so quickly find Elle in that position wide open. Like there were not other passes, it went to Elle and she took the shot. Like it was Bryn's quick decision making there that got Elle that three. So even though she wasn't efficient, she didn't add a ton of scoring, unfortunately. She made a big difference in the game. I will say the I will also mention Chloe Briggs. She came in, did not score any points, but she did draw 3 fouls. If I recall correctly, they were
Take that
all
charge.
during overtime. They were it, or like in the fourth quarter, like they were all late game. You go ahead, check, as I don't, but I remember like the all of the because I was texting multiple times, being like she drew another offensive foul. And I do think that was an important contribution on her part. And you had asked like if there was anything we saw in like other games that you think we think sort of translated to the Maryland game. And the one thing I will say is like going back to the Minnesota game, one, I wanted to note that they dominated the paint against Minnesota 44 to 18. I think that like there is certainly a trend in games that they are blowing out, where they are getting a lot
Yes,
of
I
paint
wanted to mention
points.
that. I forgot that.
Um, but also it was another game where it was sort of like just enough spread out scoring and then the Savia Sellers show. And I think Maryland was a similar situation where like you got just enough from everybody else. No one else like got 20, no one else like really stood out, but you got just enough from enough people that then you could go on and have the Savia Sellers show. And this was arguably, or not arguably, this was her the best, her career high scoring. This is sort of the most she has contributed. And they needed every single one of those points. A lot of it we had talked about, I think, early in the season, like how effective she is getting to the basket. So many times it was her just driving to the basket, drawing a foul, getting the and one. Like, I think, and the reason I'm thinking about it is because my mom was asking about it, and she was kind of like, do you think she could, sort of play in the W? And, Kelsey Plum is sort of like an example of how she could play in the W is you be crafty and you be fast. You can hit your 3-point shot like crazy, and you can drive to the basket and be fast and use your size. Use the fact that you are small. Get under the tall players, whatever. Use your speed, and she does that really, really well. And I think she drew like 5 fouls in the Maryland game or something. I have it somewhere. Um, I don't know. She only drew 4 fouls in that game. Wait, am I looking at the right thing? No, I'm not. No, she drew 5 fouls. I was right. Um, and so just, gosh, I can never say enough about Savia Sellers. And the other thing, going back to the story I wrote in December, like after it was one of the overtimes. I can't remember if it was the first or second overtime. But she missed a free throw for the first time in the game, and then the broadcast showed her just like there on the free throw line smiling. And in like a damn, I missed that. And I feel like that is so crucial to how Savia plays. Her she like she knows when to be serious and she takes what she's doing very seriously, but at the same time she plays with this joy and this belief in herself that I feel is very what's the word I'm looking for? Uh
Evident?
contagious. Contagious is
Ah,
what I was looking for. Um you have to be very confident in yourself to take 15 threes even when you only hit
yeah.
5 of them. And they needed all 5 of those threes. Like in the end, the threes, even though they were inconsistent throughout the game, they were 1 of 7 from three in both the first and the fourth quarters, and hit none in the second quarter, but hit 4 in the third quarter. Like they made the difference in the end, just barely, I think. I also think 12 turnovers is not great, but it is better than 20 turnovers.
Mhm.
So I think like
I love
keeping
math.
turnovers under control, kind of a massive thing. And then they sort of just sort of edged Maryland in all of like the major categories: points off turnovers, points in the paint, second chance points, fast break points. So they had 13 points off turnovers to Maryland's 7, 40 points in the paint to Maryland's 36, 24 second chance points to Maryland's 14, 11 fast break points to Maryland's 5. Like those sorts of things, like fast break points in particular, I feel like are always big for UW because they play the 4 guard lineup, and they're trying to write in transition. That was sort of a takeaway from the Penn State game for me, was even though they could not contain Gracie Merkel very effectively. She had a very efficient game and probably should have taken more shots. Was eventually they realized that she was not getting down the floor very fast, and Yulia could beat her down the floor. And then they finally got a couple layups that way. Not that they necessarily needed them, but I do think that consistently the second chance points honestly surprised me. Like them being good offensive rebounders is always going to be like a little bit of a shock to me, in a nice way. Same with paint points if when they're like dominating that in a close, not dominating, but they're like edging that in a close game. But getting points off turnovers and fast break points, I feel like is so important for them. So when like in I think it was the Michigan State game when or no, the Purdue game where they like let in a lot of points off turnovers for Purdue, like that's really bad because that's how they want to get their points.
Right.
Like
I feel like
they
Tina's
want
talked about that too.
yeah, like they want to go fast, but they don't want to go so fast that like they have no control and that they're losing the ball constantly. And then the other thing from the Maryland game, because the announcers kept bringing up that whenever the ball got to Yulia in the high post, the
Mm,
offense sort of stopped. Like there was some movement, but it was minimal, and they were not guarding her because she was not turning around towards the basket. And that is something that we have talked about. I don't believe on the podcast. Oh, maybe we did talk about it on the last one.
pretty sure we did.
And I had asked Tina about it after the last home game. You know, does she want like Yulia's only shooting when she is like directly under the bucket? Do you
Right.
want her taking that sort of mid-range, long mid-range shot that Bryn has been so good at? And the answer was like Yulia's been working really hard on that in practice and it's looking really good, you know. And I said, "Are you encouraging her to take it more?" And she said, "She's working on it in practice and it's looking really good." And so
So kind of no.
it was like I can't tell what the answer is here.
That was Bella. We're working on it.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's Yulia still doesn't have confidence in it or if the coaching staff still doesn't have confidence in it. Um, you know, like it was sort of endlessly frustrating for us or like Percy kept making comments during the Penn State game when Yulia would have it in the high post like just shoot it. Just shoot it. Like they are not guarding you at all. 'Cause and it just seemed like whenever they got stuck there, like they were really stuck. And so that's why like those fast break points and points off turnovers were so important because they were doing great when they were running. Like when they did not have to set up a half court offense, things were great. Half
And
court
we were
offense
concerned.
was a bit of a struggle.
Well, and I remember talking about that before the season of being concerned about the distribution in the high post because Delia was so good at that.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen, we've definitely seen glimpses of that from Bryn. I know that like early on in the season, I did compare Bryn to Delia in the sense of that she can shoot that elbow jumper that Delia was so good at, and also, just passing from the high post. But yeah, I think that with a kind of classic big like Yulia instead of more of a versatile, kind of a versatile forward like Delia or Bryn, I think that that is something that they're running into where she really can. I know we talked about this the last time too, where there would just be times where she'd be under the basket and she wouldn't even go up for that either. And
Mhm.
so that, yeah, definitely a point
Yeah,
of concern.
like Bryn's mid range has been great, particularly against Penn State. I think she hit her
Mhm.
first 6 shots, and if I recall, they were all kind of mid range shots.
Midi.
Um, and the thing is like I think that Yulia's distribution has been good. Like I think her vision has been good. Her running in transition has been good. Where an issue comes up is when they don't feel the need to guard her. Like, because they're not even like because they don't even really need to have someone under the basket because she's not even deciding to put it down and dribble it towards the basket. Like, that she, the reason Delia was so dangerous is because
Right.
she
Go
loved
to
that sweep
rim.
through move to go to the
Right.
rim, or she could take that mid-range shot. And
And if they
Yulia
take
has
away the
shown no
passing,
interest in doing any of that.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's very clear that all she wants to do is pass. And
Hmm.
so it's very easy for whatever team they're playing to just be like, okay, leave her alone and go put an extra player on Savia or go put an
Hmm.
Right.
extra player on Avery, whoever. Like I fully think that her passing has been strong, but because she's not showing any interest in scoring, like it just doesn't require her being guarded the same. And even when Bryn is
Right.
missing shots, she's at
Yeah.
least making you guard her.
Yeah,
Like I
that's a
think,
good point.
Right.
Penn State they gave her, a couple of those. They teams tend to give Bryn a couple mid-range shots. And I remember a couple games where she sort of like would miss would miss the first three and then hit them and then they start guarding her.
Hmm.
But it was still like eventually like she was making it a
Making it up, yeah.
danger.
Right.
Hmm.
They gave her the
And
elbow, and then it was 7 for 12, and you're like, oh shit, we shouldn't have done that.
yeah, like there's fully something there that requires you guarding her. Um, and I do think, obviously I think Bryn's been a little undersized in certain situations. Like she did struggle against Gracie Merkel. She sort of admitted that after the game. Um,
I think she
just
got asked if she'd ever guarded a player that tall, and she was like,
yeah,
no, I don't
no.
think I ever have.
And I was like, great, can't wait for UCLA.
Hmm.
Oh,
Um,
Jesus.
we're gonna pretend that that game is like not even gonna happen.
Hmm.
But so like there's been a lot of really good things that Yulia has done, but I do think that the Maryland game, because again, like she was 2 of 3 from the floor in that game. Like like or no, I'm looking at the wrong game. Excuse me. She was 2 of 8. It was a rough game for her. In the Maryland game, but she had 8 rebounds, like and 5 points. She can really contribute. And I just think that right now she's letting two she's just letting them not guard her enough. The other thing I'm realizing now that I'm looking at my notes about confidence, if I remember correctly, the broadcasters, because I think I said this before we started recording, she was 1 of 9 before she hit the game tying three that Bryn got the rebound for. And that is a confidence you need from your shooter in that situation. Like, was not a good, efficient game for her. We talked before recording about those 2 missed free throws that were very out of character and kind of painful. But, kind of similar to Savia's confidence, like at that point in the game, you need to think you're going to make that shot. I think the only other 3 she made came in overtime. I might be mistaken about that, but that is sort of what my brain is remembering watching. So I just think what I'm most excited about is that they came back and executed it in overtime. I don't think we haven't seen them in a ton of overtimes, just even in
No.
recent years. So it does feel a little like they maybe have taken some of those lessons from Purdue. And, because what we had talked about early on was like, will they have enough tough lessons and then, be able
Right.
to take those lessons into account early enough in the season? And I think are we halfway through conference play? Are we 3 quarters? I don't know how far we are through conference play. We are a amount of time through conference play.
I think almost exactly half because I think their first conference game, their first conference game, except for that weird random USC game in December, was January 1st against Michigan.
Right, right.
So we are almost at February 1st. And I know that the
Yeah.
Big Ten tournament's the first weekend of March or second weekend of
Yeah,
March. So I
yeah.
feel
So
like
it's got to be
exactly
something
half.
like that. And so like getting this kind of win about halfway through, because like even though Maryland is hurt,
You've got eight
they
games left.
even though Maryland is hurt, they are also still ranked. And that
Right.
like and it's not like those injuries happened right before this game. Those injuries have been affecting this team for a while now. So they've
Right.
adjusted. Like Alucia Kanawa, who massive transfer from Duke, not a big impact, like didn't get a ton of rebounds. When she played for Duke, I remember her getting so many just like offensive rebounds and fully changing games. She was not able to sort of make that kind of impact in this game. And also, it was not a bad crowd in Maryland. They had over 6,000 people. So it does make me feel a little bit better about them playing on the road. Like several of those games in the surge, I guess as we're calling it, um, were road wins, and this is, in the past, I feel like, like the Michigan game was a home game. Even when they beat Stanford a couple of years back, it was a home game. Like a lot of their
Right.
sort of upsets come at home, except for sort of
Well,
that like run at the end of last year,
right. And
which was
then
like a little weird.
the last really high ranked one before the Michigan, there was one against Oregon State in 24, right? I looked
Oh,
that
the
up.
year they
That would
went to the
not have
tournament.
been that would not Oregon State was not good in 2020 or it was not
Oh.
good last year. Sorry. Not good. I should say once the Pac-12
It
dissolved,
was
Oregon State has
Savia's
struggled a
freshman
bit.
year, and but that also was a home game.
Yes, no, that's my point, is
Okay,
that
yeah, yeah.
adding to the home, yeah, they were
Mhm.
ninth ranked, number nine, Oregon State in the 23-24 season.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like, I mean, they only led for about 8.5 minutes in that entire game.
Mhm.
They were out, like you mentioned it, the sort of the first quarter was bad for them. They were outscored 22-11. And then the second and fourth quarters were really pretty even, but it was the third quarter where they just like suddenly actually hit their threes and
Mhm.
outscored Maryland 23-11. Like sort of being able to come out at halftime, I think, and make up that deficit is really big. And just that, like you mentioned, the late game execution, I think is really important to see from them, like to see
Especially
that
in
they
a
are learning that.
conference, especially in a
Yeah.
conference like the Big Ten, it is, as much as we all are sad about the dissolving of the Pac-12, it is really, really exciting for them to be a part of this conference
Hmm.
you know, as we saw with Purdue, anyone could win on any given night, and that genuinely is true for the most part. And, I believe that they have, I get all the emails. I think
Like
that
eight
they
ranked
have the
teams or
most ranked
something. Yeah.
teams, yeah, of any conference, I think, ever. And the last time that it happened was also the Big Ten, which was interesting. But yeah, that's a pretty big
I
deal.
do kind of think you can make an argument that it is the strongest conference
I would
in
agree.
women's college basketball right now. I would not have said that in previous years, but a lot of teams that I feel were pretty like mid in previous years have kind of like upped their game this year.
Hmm.
Like I don't know what it is. Um like they're just it's a really really strong conference. Um so yeah, I think just really good to see that sort of very stressful situation end up in our favor. And it does also make me think like, you know, in a way, I wonder how much whichever team forces overtime always kind of has the momentum a little bit.
Hmm.
Against Purdue, Purdue forced the overtime with what was like a 9-0 run or something, 12-0 run to end the quarter. And like like yes, like there was sort of an end of game collapse, but it was also like going into overtime, the collapse continued despite, having a timeout and time to reset yourself because Purdue had the momentum. UW being the team to sort of tie this game up at the end, I feel like gave them some momentum, gave them some kick at the end. I was kind of I thought they would look more tired than they did.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was kind of shocked to see that Maryland actually played one less player. But I guess it kind of makes sense given all the injuries. But it was still like mostly the same six players that are, because like Bryn is sort of like a half starter. Like pretty much her and Yulia share time. Um, and to see them, get it was good to see, like couple minutes out of Sienna Harvey, couple minutes out of Chloe Briggs, couple big minutes out of Devin. But like really other than that, it was the starters. And while I don't think that's like super sustainable, right? Like we do need some bench production.
So far it has, but so yeah, so far it has been. I mean,
Yeah.
same with Savia. So far, the way that she's been scoring has shockingly been sustainable. And when
Huh.
she doesn't score in the way that she has been, shockingly, it
Yeah.
hasn't been completely disastrous. And I think that that is like a
Right.
biggest. a really big point
But
of
those have also
positive.
been the
Okay,
less tough
are we being
teams, I
stopped?
think. Like when the times
We're
when
being
Savia has been done less, it's been like and other team players have stepped up. Like yes, it's good that they've done that, but it hasn't been against the Michigan State or in the
Mhm.
Purdue game. Like they just didn't get
Sure.
enough from other players
Yeah.
in those games. But I do understand your point, and
Mhm.
I do think that like they are getting like the addition of Avery in particular and like that point production has been very useful. And now I will let you talk, Charles.
Yes, no, I understand it hasn't been against the big teams, but even last year, so many times you could see down the line, say, "Hey, you're not do it's when Savia or at times L because it hasn't been as much of depending on her this year. Um, it you were like, hey, what's gonna happen? Like Delia has to handle everything down in the paint and largely defensively, right? Because it felt like at times Tina was like, hey, we need you to stick against their best player, go and get them. Um, it just felt like I could be remembering that incorrectly, but it did feel like this was Savia or bust offensively at times,
A
especially
little bit
yeah.
of a Jewel Lloyd 2023 Storm
Well, it's funny that you
season.
say that
A little bit.
because I want to kind of go over some of the players things. 'Cause I know we've been talking a bit here. But I want to kind of talk about some of the different players and their different arcs, right? Because one of the fans, and if she's watching this, she'll realize it's her, kind of likened L to Jewel Lloyd about kind of getting shots up, being a volume shooter, and if they're not hitting shots, so I thought that was interesting, and I'll start with her because I have thoughts on other players. Because if you look here, and I'm going to use a tool that Bella's going to be mad at me, but if we're going to record pretty consistently,
You
I
mean
will
because you
give her
didn't give me
yes,
the login?
Bella. Let's not do this on camera. Um, if you look at the win shares for this Washington team and the win shares above replacement, just in terms of general value, right? I come from a baseball background. WAR wins above replacement, basically just telling you how much better you are than just some average player, right? The scatter plot here has Savia and Avery way above everybody else.
Mm.
Savia has 4.8 win shares. She has 6.6 wins above replacement. She's helping her team win six more games than an average player would. And Avery has 4.8 win shares. It's kind of interesting that they're the same. And 6.4 wins above replacement. Nobody else is above three in
Wow.
anything. Like it is those two, and that's not uncommon. We've seen that, right? It feels like every post game we get at home is all right, one or the other or both of them.
Mhm.
You know, um, what is interesting to me though is, and I was thinking about this when Bella was talking about Bryn. Is Bryn McGoy is the next closest player, and she's doing that as a freshman.
Mhm.
2.2 win shares, 2.8 wins above replacement,
And as
and
a
so
non-starter as well.
as a non-starter. So oh, I'll get to the starter thing. Sorry, I got to pick a point because Bill, you guys speak, and then I have all these. It's like a scatter plot. I have all these things I want to talk about, and they just kind of start drifting away like balloons. And you're like, "Wait, come back."
That's kind of
Um,
me when I talk second too. I'm like, wait,
the
how many,
bench,
which points did Murray make, and how can I talk about this?
right? The bench is interesting because you mentioned Yuli in the passing because I know that's something that Tina and I think some of her teammates mentioned early in the season is they love her ability to pass the basketball. And that is great, but as has been talked about, as we've talked about in the show, as we talked about well, very well documented in our group chat, I just feels like she could do so much more if she could even go to the basket. Because you're big enough,
Just try.
just
Yeah.
try.
Just try.
You're gonna draw fouls, like unless it's
No one's
officiated
close enough to
weirdly.
steal the ball from you. You can dribble.
Hmm.
No, like the only size like comparisons are probably what Gracie Myrtle and maybe Lauren Bet.
Learn
Well, not
bets.
maybe,
Hmm.
but Lauren Betts. I mean, how many other bigs are there that size
Olivia
wise?
Anderson, if she played,
And well, I mean,
because
even
let me
then,
remind you, she's only an inch shorter than Lauren Betts.
she's not
But even
like
Betts will put the ball on the
Oh, for sure.
ground and has increased her mid-range shooting.
Hmm.
right. So it's just like we all kind of wonder about that. The thing is, though, is they are such in terms of your two primary bigs, right? And Yulia and Bryn, they're two, as you mentioned, two very different players. So, like, I don't think anyone's calling for this, but if they're over, this is not going to be like a Delia Tyra thing last year where you slot in Delia to the five and Tyra sits on the bench. I think this is fine how it's working right now. I
Well,
think
and
you
especially
wish,
because the guard presence is so strong that
Yeah.
right?
with,
You're not
with
taking. someone out and
Right. With Bryn's mid-range, yes, it's very helpful, but then you also have all these guards that can shoot. So do you need a post that can also shoot the mid-range? Not
right.
all the time. No.
Not right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not all the time is the good point. And so I'll transition to the bench question with this. You know, I'm very, to me, it's very fun to watch the Bryn, like, it seems game by game, because you're talking about the efficiency, right? And the Penn State, Penn State, yes, they're skating. Penn State game in particular, she was 8 for 9 against Rutgers. Like, the efficiency was really there, which was great to see. Um, in the Maryland game, she did have a very open three that didn't work. She'll work on that. I'm not super concerned about that right now. But even then, like the idea that, hey, and I get that you could feel this way about a lot of five-star freshmen, but it's just very cool to me to see the different points of seeing what works for her confidence-wise, seeing her take the mid-range. They're gonna give her the elbow. Hey, fuck you, I'm gonna take
Mhm.
that. I don't think Bryn would say that. She seems very nice. But
Yeah, that doesn't seem like her vibe.
no, it's just been very interesting to kind of watch her put the pieces together and be a pretty integral part of this program in just her freshman season. And it's always funny to think that Avery Howell is doing this as a sophomore, which
Sophomore.
is very, it doesn't click to me in my head that she's a sophomore. Feels
Well, and
like she's a
also
junior.
not that we should be talking about next season by any means, but I do think that, that the 3-point shot, the mid-range, I think is going to be huge for Bryn next season. Like that
Right?
needs to be, especially shooting the three needs to be a huge emphasis next year when you have, Ella Dean, Hannah Steins, graduating.
Oh, yes. I was like, she ain't coming back.
No, I
I
was
thought you were
saying
saying she was coming back.
graduating,
I was like,
graduating.
Rowan, she's a senior.
No, I do know that.
I was
But
like,
when you have them graduating, and so again, we're saying you don't need to be shooting the three now, you don't need to be shooting the mid range when you have so much presence there. But when you think next year about it is so crazy to think that both Savia and Avery will be coming back next year, Avery for 2 more years. When you have, people like that, when similar enough players, smaller guards, it'll be really
right.
nice for Bryn to be able to be a threat from every level, which she already definitely is looking like, but just taking that a step ahead will be huge too. Also because Yulia's done with eligibility.
Right. And so
I
that's
don't
my
see
thing.
Olivia Anderson, Shayla Gilmer's leaving.
Right.
Post wise, it's not looking great. So, I think that she'll really be huge for them next year.
Well, and I
Well, and
think her
that's
mid-range is important now, honestly, because other than Elle, I don't think we have any
right.
particularly
No, right.
Hmm.
big mid-range shooters. Savia will take a couple, but like more than anything, she is a three or drive to the
Or
basket
drive.
kind of player.
Yep.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hannah Steins is kind of similar. Like she is trying to get into the paint. Avery is taking threes or getting in the paint. So I that's part of why like Yulia not taking any mid-range shots is a little frustrating
Hmm.
because I do feel like when Bryn takes mid-range shots, it opens up another part of the floor that really only Elle is utilizing. And it also feels like Elle is not as confident in that mid-range shot as she had been last season. I don't know if
Mm.
that's the injury
Hmm.
kind of struggling to come back, but like I feel I would have to actually look at analytics to know, but it feels like she is taking less of those mid-range shots that I feel were almost like a majority of what she took last
Hmm.
season. And the other reason I mentioned like
Interesting.
that stat earlier about Bryn being highest freshman scoring in conference play since Savia, and I had mentioned this at the end of the last podcast, is like I do feel like we're getting a bit of a Savia's freshman year arc from
Oh,
Bryn
Hmm.
interesting.
where
Hmm.
she is coming into her own. And even if she is coming off the bench, she's starting to play minutes, like she's a starter and she's making a really big impact off the bench. And it's not like she has to become a starter immediately, but she is finding her way as a freshman to be very competitive, very effective in like her specific strengths. Whereas like for example, a Devin, as much as I love Devin and I think she's been very good, she did not like in her freshman year become quite as
Yeah.
impactful as a freshman Savia. I mean, freshman Savia, I've loved Savia since the beginning. Freshman Savia was very, very good and still is very good. So I do feel like we're seeing a bit of that like immediate impact plus growth from
Hmm.
Bryn, kind of like we saw from Savia.
Yeah.
It is interesting looking at the just the overview. Bryn's stats here, like great percentile in usage, offensive rebound percentage, player efficiency, win shares. Ooh. Sorry, this is very nice. Anyway,
When she
um,
comes off the bench, she is making an impact. And
Mhm.
that
right.
is what you want from your bench players, is you want them
Mhm.
to come in and do something
Well, and
different.
even past that, like I wouldn't have doubted it with Tina, but we talked about this. I feel like in the offseason, it's like your 5-star, your highest recruit in program history. What's that going to look like? How are you going to
Yeah.
utilize her? Are you going to start her? And you're not starting her, but it doesn't really matter. As you mentioned,
Mhm.
the impact is there without needing to disrupt what you've got with your starting five. I do wonder though. I feel like it needs to be talked about with Elle. We've kind of touched on her. What do you, because I know we kind of squabbled about it a little bit, not really squabbled, but mentioned it with the Maryland game. She did hit this massive three to tie things up pretty late, but this hasn't, unfortunately, because we all love Elle, right? It hasn't been the senior year that I know she's wanted or that she deserves, right? Because as you mentioned, it was the Savia Sellers and Ella Jean show for the majority of last season, and then Valea is battling all the demons in the paint. Like Valea, I mean, God bless her. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
What do you, like? I'm gonna kind of open that up because the efficiency certainly hasn't been there, and that's not to say that Eladine has always been an efficient scorer, but it's just been interesting. I know she's someone too that it's not like she's necessarily live and die at the three. I feel like she can do a little bit more than just be like a shooter from three.
Mhm.
Um, it just it's interesting. It doesn't feel like there's a couple games as mentioned where she did have some nice outputs, but it just hasn't really been El Ladine, unfortunately. The USC game come back 0 for 10, kind of scattered. Northwestern game was pretty solid, 7-12. 5 of 11 against Michigan. Five of those were from three. 8 of 11 against Indiana. That's great. And then ever since then, 3 of 10, 3 of 11, 2 of 8, 3 of 12. Um, you know, I am curious what either of you guys, you there in Colorado, um,
Yes.
just what you think about that because I don't know if I'd agree with it just because of the potential here, and I don't know who you'd swap in for her. But one of the fans also that I was talking about was like, "Do you think about benching her?" And I was like, I don't think you can, but and I don't know if Tina would, right? There's a
I
can,
think
there's a
so.
would, and there's a should, and I don't think Tina would do that. So anyway, I want to open that up just on L and the season that she's having.
I mean it is interesting. Well, I wanted to talk about this because I sent both of you. I've now seen two different mock drafts. Obviously, this WNBA draft that may or may not be happening, but this hypothetical draft is different because it is an expansion year, so there are way more spots. So I don't know, take this with a grain of salt because it is a different draft, but I have now seen two mock drafts that have, Eladine on it. And, as obviously people that are very close to the team, I understand why. But I do think that, maybe those mock drafts are not seeing as much of what her senior year has been like, as specifically. And I think the thing that has been disappointing, we know she had the injury. We know she was coming back from that, and but I think as the season has gone on, all of her best games have been against teams that are not great, and I think that that is the biggest red flag to me. She season high 23 against Northwestern, season or second highest 19 points against Indiana. She had that stretch, the Michigan State Purdue Indiana game, I believe. She had 15, 13, and 19. So really her highest scoring game against, a good team has been the 15 points against Michigan State, which was, leading the team, but still, knowing especially with Savia, 15 points being the leading scorer, um, doesn't happen very often. You usually have Savia closer to the 20s. So I think that that's been, it's Elle's performance has definitely been a concern, and I always hate saying that when there's an injury. And I think, with the mock drafts, I don't think that she should be left off of those because, in those, her first 3 years, if she was in the draft at the end of last season, I'm sure she could have, been at that point or higher. But if she continues like this, I don't really think that she, as sad as it is to say, it deserves a spot on those mock drafts because it's been a really disappointing season. And I think that I think you make a good point, Bella, about the confidence in the mid-range. It does feel like
Mm.
her injury is affecting it, not just because she obviously started late to the season, but also there does seem, I'm thinking back to like the games that I shot photos last year, and I think of all of these photos of her, in the mid-range, which is so
So
funny.
many, so
Yeah, so
many. She took
many.
so many.
And and I look like, oh, like the USC game, she was, is that the one that I was just looking at? Where was I just? Oh, well, I mean, she was, yeah, 0 for 10 from the field. Just her 2-point attempts have not been great. I mean, 4 for 13 against Purdue, from the field. It's been really disappointing, and I would love, I feel like the key to it right now is just getting over that confidence slump to be able to go back in the mid-range because I think that that's where she's missing a lot of her points that she
Yeah.
had last season is that mid-range. And yeah, we know she can knock down some really key 3-point shots. I mean, she was, 5 for 7 from three against Michigan State. So that is huge. We know she can do that. But when that's not working, she needs that mid-range. And I do think when you think about the mid-range, it's really just Bren right
Mhm.
now. And
And I think four of those five threes came in the first quarter of that
I was
game.
gonna say they were all back to back to
Right.
back to back.
Yeah.
Yep.
That first
So
punch.
so yeah, I think, we all hate to say anything about, this being a disappointing season for Elle because
It's just
she
a
was so
reality,
great
though.
last year, but it's just, yeah, it is. And I think that, we're not seeing any like anything lingering from injuries. It's not like she's on any kind of minute restriction by any means. She played 45 minutes against Maryland. So really I do think it feels like a confidence thing that she is not going to the spots that were working really well for her before.
And at the same time, like, although it has been a down season for her, I do not think she should be coming off the bench because of it.
I agree.
Um, Even being significantly less efficient and generally struggling this year, sh there is enough precedent that teams have to guard her.
Mhm.
Um, and they've got to guard her at the 3-point line, and I do think they're still guarding her in the mid-range. But she's not even but it's not even so much as like she's not even taking that shot as much. She's not even getting to that spot as much.
Mhm.
Like it does not seem like she is going for that. It looks like she's like, I'm just gonna take these threes. And it's tough because I don't think we've had her in a single post game. Um, or maybe we had one like shortly after she returned. But we haven't really been able to get any insight from her about what might be going on, or how she's feeling, how an injury may be affecting her, if she's feeling less confident. Like, so it's hard to know because we have not had any actual insight from the player herself. Um, and I do still have hope that it will just I don't want to say like miraculously turn around, but I think there's sort of enough of the season left for her to turn things around. Um, and some opponents that they will really need 3-point shooting against. Like I'm kind of thinking, like even if
UCLA.
she's, yeah, that's exactly my thought is like, is if you are back by UCLA, like that is what you need because you are not beating UCLA in the paint. Like
Mhm.
you are going to have to dominate the 3-point line in that game. Um, and so I, and we know she's a hard worker and a tough competitor and someone who, like I think Savia kind of talked like maybe I don't know, maybe she gets in her head a little bit too much, is a little hard on herself.
Mm.
I don't want to say that like I know it for sure. But that was sort of what I've gathered from talking to them.
Mm.
I don't think it's off
Um,
base.
No, me
yeah.
neither.
And I do, I will also say like I think the 40-point game last year did come like against Northwestern. Like I don't it wasn't
It
Yes.
like
did.
it came in like
She does really well against Northwestern.
yeah,
That was
but so
also her
like it wasn't,
career
like
high.
Savia scoring 38 in a double overtime win.
Right. Right.
And so like I don't think it's that that odd that her biggest games have come in the not toughest games, but
Hmm.
I do think it's fair to expect bigger games from her in the tougher games, like
Agreed.
just overall, because we know she has that ability.
Yeah.
And if this team is going to make a tournament run, having Eladine confident and relatively efficient is what you need. Because Savia Avery, great, but you need a third.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right,
Like,
100%. Yep,
and she
that's the
kind of is
whole.
who we expected to be the third.
Yes, for
And so
sure.
I
I'm
think we
hopeful
expected
she'll
her to
get
be
back
like
to that.
the second, and
We did
Yeah,
Avery
I
expect
was
her
gonna
to be
say
the
third.
second
we
because we
expected
were
Avery to be maybe
surprised
the
by
third
Avery.
or
Yeah.
fourth. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like
Avery has been a pleasant surprise in that regard.
Hmm.
at at its best, you would have Savia, who we could just let Bella sit here and talk about Savia for 3 hours,
Just start
probably
going,
more if she had her
love of my
notes.
life. Do. Anyway,
Okay, let's be careful with that wording. Um, Eladine, who, can be Eladine, and Avery Howell. And then you've got Bryn McGoy coming off the bench and the impact that she's providing in her freshman season. So that is a team that makes a deep run. It
Yeah.
is nice though, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it is nice that at this point in the season we're talking about, actually making the run in the tournament instead of just making it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Can they qualify
Right.
for the tournament?
Right.
That was one of the episodes. Will Washington make it?
Yeah, very different conversation from last
And it
Yes.
was
season for sure.
Columbia. So, but yeah,
Hmm.
okay. And we'll wrap it up here because we got to get out of here. We got to go into the cold Colorado winter. All of us, we're all going.
All of you, please
Mhm.
come.
Bella, get ready. Yeah, they're only. It's really weird to look at this schedule the rest of the way, right? Because no, stay with me. It's Illinois, number 11 Ohio State, which is at home to go to the point about
Hmm.
being at the home games. Wisconsin, um, number 8 Iowa. I know Rowan loves that.
And
Oregon,
who will be dropping after their loss to unranked USC, I'm
right?
assuming.
Oregon, UCLA in UCLA, Nebraska at last home game. That's senior day against Nebraska at noon on
On
February
my
22nd.
Oh my
birthday.
gosh.
They're gonna bring Bella out, and it's Bella's birthday.
Well,
They're
they did
like,
that for that random band guy at the last game.
So
They had
funny.
the band sang happy birthday to someone on the court,
That
and
is
I think
so
it was
oh
just their
no,
funny.
I was
band
saying,
friend.
oh right. Well, they do the like staff thing every game. Um, just imagine like tearful tributes for these seniors, and then oh by the way, this writer's birthday
This
is today,
writer, she's here at every game.
and Bella's like, hi guys,
Also,
where's
technically
Dubs?
was a senior in December.
So true. It's
Listen,
your senior night.
oh right, yeah. Anyway, and then you end the season against Oregon. You do the 2 games against Oregon. That's right. Um, so I don't know. There's plenty of there's like 3 massive games for you, depending,
Hmm.
of course, where Iowa gets dropped. But I don't imagine they fall entirely out of
No,
the ranking.
No, no.
no.
So it's Ohio State, Iowa, UCLA, and then I thought
And my
that
understanding is Wisconsin's been good this year too.
Um,
oh
I was going to point out, I was going to say if we were doing closing thoughts, I think that an underratedly big one will be Illinois, the next game
right
against
Yes,
because
Illinois,
that
because
too.
they've been teetering in and out
They were
of
ranked for a
the
bit,
rank,
yeah.
yeah, in and out of the rankings for a little bit. I know that they have a really strong freshman that has an interesting last name, Parchment, something Parchment. Um, I
well,
think
and
that's all
then
I remember.
the big thing was Corey Close like telling them to stay
Yes, that they had a
together,
good core. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
right?
think, I think like with the
You
Ohio,
say
just
her
for my
name right?
Corey Close, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For my like very last thought, like I think, Ohio State, Iowa, UCLA will obviously all be important. I think that those are games that, obviously, ideally they would win.
Oh,
But if they get within, let's just say within 15, you'd still be in a comfortable spot with all three of those teams because they are so highly ranked. I think it's the Illinois, the Wisconsin. I don't know if I would say Wisconsin's been really good this season necessarily, but I feel like it's
I think
the,
better is more
yes, better,
probably what
sure.
I was going
Like
through for.
I think that like because UW, I mean, actually, this is the perfect way to wrap it up because if we're going in the spirit of UW starting the game really strong to then they have a lull, like it works out. I feel like the end of their schedule is kind of like this, where they have positioned themselves highly enough in the
Mhm.
rankings that if they lose to an Ohio State, lose to an Iowa, lose to a UCLA, obviously depending on how much the loss is, I
Mhm.
think it's okay.
Right.
But the big ones I think are Illinois, Wisconsin. I think, we all know that I have talked at length about Oregon, especially on
Yeah,
my
we
Twitter.
can't ignore Oregon for
We
sure.
can't, we definitely cannot. They played really closely with Iowa. They've played really closely with a bunch of teams. They've literally been points away from multiple ranked wins.
And just
And
as a
so,
rivalry game, I feel like
well,
it's
that
always
too.
one of the toughest on the schedule.
Yes. Yeah, and former Husky Ari Long has been playing really well. There are a lot of connections here with the rivalry game. Katie Fiso, Seattleite has
Your
been
fave,
playing really, really
yes.
well. So, I think like I really feel like the games that are not the ranked games are honestly kind of more important for
Hmm.
them moving forward. Like they cannot have a another Purdue
Yeah,
situation again. And honestly, all the teams that they are playing from now on are better than Purdue in the rankings. So I think that
for
those are
sure.
the big ones. And then obviously, I think with UCLA, like you said, they
Olivia
need to be
Anderson will
on
stop
point
her.
from three.
It's fine.
Only an inch shorter,
Just
which I
throw
still think
Olivia
is
and Shayla
crazy.
Gilmer at her. Lauren
Yep.
Betts, don't worry.
Don't
Shayla
worry.
Gilmer is ready to stop you.
Yep.
Everybody else on that team, don't care.
No, don't care.
Don't care
Well,
about
and then
Charlie
you
Ledger Walker, Kiki
No.
Rice, Gianna
Right.
nope,
Newkins.
don't hear you, Bella.
Gabriela
Nope, that's
Jaquez.
Yeah.
enough. That's
But
enough.
yeah, so that's
Well,
I
and then
think
you've
that
got the
those are big.
tournament.
Right.
Like, you can still, God, oh, Michigan in the tournament. Never
Yeah.
forget Storm legend Jordan Hobbs.
Storm Legend.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was good. I mean, it is, I think that's my takeaway from like all of this is just the position that they're in
Mhm.
now as compared to last year, where it was like, please just win a ranked game so that
Yeah.
we can have like more confidence
Yeah,
here
get off
going
the
into the
bottom dregs of the conference versus you're kind of solidly in the top middle.
Yeah. Honestly, Oregon this season feels a little bit like UW last season, where we kept being like,
interesting.
please notice
Hmm.
UW. They only
Yes.
lost to LSU by, this many. They
Like
only lost
one
to so and
point.
so. Yeah, and I feel like Oregon's been that way, where they just haven't quite gotten what they need, and what they need could be beating UW, depending on how they do up to that point.
Don't
But
put that in the world. Go to Colorado. That's it. That's fine.
okay,
How dare you say that?
I do have
Katie
to dip
Fiso can
out
drop
for
20, and that's fine. 20 and lose. That's
20
it.
and
In
lose.
both games, I
That would
remember
be
there's two of them.
that would be ideal.
Oh, right, there's two.
There's two kind of
Question.
back to back.
Bella, no, not Bella. Rowan postgame. What did you think of Katie Fiso, Tina Langley's legend? Don't
It's
care.
a valid question.
It is a valid question,
They
and it's
probably watched
actually
her in high
They
school. I
haven't
mean,
oh, I'm
played.
sure.
there's
I
no
mean,
way they didn't.
I'm like 90% sure that she had an offer from UW.
Yeah, she had to have.
So
As a Garfield player,
yep, with
100%.
Delia,
Next
they love
season,
the Garfielders. Yeah. Okay, well,
putting it out
I
there.
do have to dip out before
Yes,
Bella gives her
we're
final
leaving.
thoughts. So,
Oh,
No, I
or
was just gonna agree with your final thoughts.
okay,
I think
great.
no final thoughts. We're done.
No final
Until
thoughts
next
for Bella.
time, take care of yourselves. Be well, whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, how about them Huskies?
Ooh, purple and gold, baby.
Yeah. When are you going to watch all those away games, though?
All those away games. There are a lot of them, and I was hoping to come to Rough and Tumble because this is the home of Circling Saddle Sports. If that's okay with you.
I think that's a great idea. Hope to see you all here.